a great weekend. So I'm shooting you this video tonight to wrap up my video series on your money mindset. So I've been taking you through the 6 types of money that affect, really, when we talk about your relationship with money, the different areas that you have to focus on, because it's not as simple as focusing on broad concepts like wealth and abundance. And so far I've taken you through 5 different videos. So we've looked at savings, we've looked at debt, we've looked at income, we've looked at income goals, and we've looked at expenses. So today's the final video, and we're going to talk about quite a different form of money, and that's called toxic money. Now, I will caveat this by saying that toxic money doesn't apply to everyone, but as I describe it, it might remind you of someone who is dealing with some form of toxic money. And so this is an area that you really want to clear, because it does hold you back in all the other types of relationships with money. And so what is toxic money? So quite simply, toxic money is a situation where money is owed to you in some shape or form. And it's almost something that in some cases you feel like you were cheated out of the money, or it's something that you rely on but you pay a price for receiving that type of money. So, you know, even when you finally receive the money, it usually feels like there's some kind of a battle around it as well. So it hasn't been received in a good way, or in some cases you don't receive it at all. So the best way for me to explain toxic money is just actually to give you some examples of it. So one of the first forms, and this could apply to a lot of people, is actually just being owed money. So, you know, this is where maybe you might have lent money to a friend or a family member. Hey Cheryl, thanks for joining, great to have you here. Yeah, so being owed money. So it's not the actual, I suppose, experience of being owed money that is the problem, it's the emotions that come around it. So particularly where perhaps someone owes you something, but you know, they haven't paid it back and it's been a long time, and every time you see them you're reminded of it, but it's gotten to the point where you don't even feel like you can ask about it anymore, but there's all this negative tension and they stop mentioning it as well. And so there's this sort of this conflict and this battle around this money that you're owed, but nobody's talking about it. And so it's something that you might stew over inside, and it's really not healthy for you. So that's probably one of the more common types. Some of the others are less common. So another example of toxic money is relying on compensation. So this can happen sometimes where, say somebody gets sick and for whatever reason they can't work, they might have quite serious injuries, and hey Dave, great to see you on here. And yeah, they could find themselves in a situation where they're relying on this compensation, and in some cases it goes on for a really long time. So, you know, what might have started out as maybe a few weeks of sickness can carry on into months, and sometimes it can carry on into years. And it's quite an interesting situation. So, you know, people kind of become wrapped up in this cycle where they form a dependency on this money. And so in a weird way, they start to not want to get better because they're so heavily dependent on this sort of free money that's coming in. And so some people will even keep themselves rather sick or injured, and genuinely believe that they're in that state. You of course do have some people that sort of may put on the act of being sick as well, but you know, not here to judge, but the point of it is around the fact that the money's coming in and the person feels like they can't let go of it. And you do see this a lot. So you know, I know people that have worked in the workers' compensation space, and yeah, they'll speak to the fact that, you know, a big part of what their jobs are is trying to actively get people back into the workforce, because people can get so reliant on this money that they don't want to go back to work. And so what you want to do is break out of that toxic cycle. So another one that's sort of similar to this, and again, no judgment here at all. So I know a lot of people, especially women, can be in this situation, but relying on child support can be another form of toxic money. So, you know, for some people, of course, if you have a great relationship with your ex-spouse, and you've got a child support arrangement in place, that can be fine. But I know in a lot of cases, and you know, my clients often tell me this, that they're reliant on that money. Like for some women in particular, you know, they may have left the workforce and they could be finding it quite hard either to get back in, or they've just got a confidence hit around the thought of going back into the workforce. And so they can be heavily reliant on this child support to even cover basic expenses. And the problem with this again becomes around, you know, you've got to stay in contact with someone that perhaps you had quite a damaging relationship with. And so, you know, really to make that a healthy situation, you ideally want to not become reliant on this money, but a lot of people don't know how to break out of that cycle. So another example as well, very similar to child support, but sometimes people are actually still in a relationship that's, you know, really negative, and in some cases abusive. But some people will stay in a bad relationship to basically sort of fund their lifestyle. And I don't even mean that in a materialistic way, just in the sense that, you know, again, people might have panic about, well, if I leave this relationship, you know, I've got to find a place, I'm going to be out on my own. Like, that's really daunting and it's scary. So there are, you know, some very genuine fears and practical realities about exiting a relationship. But, you know, some people will put up with a lot of negativity and abuse because they're heavily reliant on the funding that's coming in from their partner. Another example of toxic money is court battles. So you hear about this a lot around, you know, inheritance, and sadly, you know, and I've seen this firsthand as well, you end up with cases where siblings take each other to court because, you know, they've got different views on how much perhaps their parents should have left them. And so that whole process, like, you know, there's obviously the money issue and what people believe is fair or unfair, but one of the real prices that people pay in going through these court battles is really the emotional price. So it's the stress, and, you know, anytime you mention the word court, often these things really, really drag out. And so you've not only got the emotional stress, you probably also have the financial stress of legal fees to get you through the court battle. And so that can be really toxic as well, because it, you know, really weighs people down, and it can become something that starts to act like this grey cloud over your life. So there's some of the examples of toxic money. So hopefully, you know, you're now understanding what I mean by toxic money. And so, you know, if you are receiving any of those kinds of money, and especially if you need them because it's a form of survival for you, so you're dependent on that to cover basic expenses, then, you know, it's something you want to have some awareness on. And you'll know if toxic money is impacting your life, because even as I described those types of money, if it sort of brought up any negative emotions or any pain or anxiety, then that's what's toxic about it, and that's what we really want to clear. And so, you know, one of the common themes around toxic money, again, in talking to sort of some of my clients and even other coaches, is that people start to find themselves in a situation where, again, especially if you're reliant on this money for your basic necessities, then people actually start to find that it stops them from earning any other kind of money. And people will start to say that ever since I got myself into this situation, I've never been able to earn my own money. And so that's the ultimate piece that you really want to break out of, because the unhealthiness associated with the toxic money stops people from being able to, you know, really tap into their greatness and their creativity and go out and do the things that they want to do, because they're weighed down by something that they're so heavily dependent on. And, you know, often people will think about the other person that's involved in the situation too, and again, that might bring up like anxiety or fear or anger. Like in some cases, the toxic element is really strong anger, and you know, we all know anger isn't really that healthy for us. You know, what you want to focus on as well is, if you are dealing with toxic money, is you sort of want to reflect on what it's costing you, and you might even ask yourself, well, what does that say about me? So, you know, the toxic money may actually start to affect your self-esteem as well, especially if you're reliant on it and you're feeling like you can't go out and perhaps, you know, find work and make your own money, then that can start to damage your own self-confidence and your sense of self-worth in going out and being able to look after yourself. So, you know, really the main thing with toxic money is, it, like debt, it's really, really damaging. And, you know, the reality is, I mean, the main solution to this is, if you are receiving any kind of toxic money, then ultimately what you have to do to break out of it is you have to release the attachment to that money, and you've ultimately got to walk away from it. So I'm not advocating in any sense that, you know, if you are receiving child support that you cut that off tomorrow when you walk away completely. What I'm saying is start to become more aware of how you feel about it and what price you are paying for it and how that perhaps might be toxic for you. And if you find that it is toxic, then you want to start to think about, you know, maybe taking small steps to breaking away from that dependency on the money. So maybe start bringing in some small amounts of income, or, you know, starting a side hustle that can start to free you up from that money, but also give you some confidence around your own abilities to earn your own money. Because ultimately you really want to break out of that, because by continuing with receiving toxic money, you just end up imposing self-limiting circumstances upon yourself that will keep you stuck there for a really long time. So if you are experiencing that, then my advice to you is to start to take some practical steps to break yourself out of toxic money. Okay, so look, ultimately, if you want to get over toxic money in a really massive way, so if you want some help to do that, then I don't know if you caught my live yesterday. I did a 1-hour workshop with another money coach, Izdihar Jamil, and we're actually going to be offering a 7-day boot camp to really give you a kickstart into 2019 and help you take control of your financial future. And so one of the elements of that boot camp is really going to be focusing on income goals and how you can come up with income generating strategies to move yourself forward, as well as get out of debt, learn how to save, and overcome your money blocks. So really start to deal with those negative emotions. So especially if you are dealing with toxic money, then learning how to free yourself from that negative attachment and how to really neutralize the deep, intense negative emotions that run through your body every time you think about that interaction with money. And so we're going to give you a big boost and help you out with that. So if you want more details about my bootcamp, then PM me or leave me a message below this video and I will send you the details. So that's it for now. So that wraps up the 6 types of money. So again, those 6 types of money were savings, debt, income goals, expenses, and we've wrapped up tonight with toxic money. So I hope you found that valuable. If you liked it, send me a like or a little love heart, that'd be great, or leave me a comment below, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye for now.